Shinji and Warhammer40k, OVA 3, all the Omakes. Okay, so basically, at the end of certain parts of the story, there were these little side things that weren't actually relevant to the plot, and I kind of ignored, and I didn't read them in any of the chapters. But since we're coming to the end, I figured, hey, why not? I'll read all of them and I'll put them all in one video. So, here you go. This is all the Omakes from Shinji and Warhammer40k. Right here. Penpen turned off the TV and set aside the newspaper. As always, the humans do as humans must. And as always, it's everyone else around them that must suffer. He was an experiment brought forth from Nerve Labs, and adopted by Misato rather than euthanized. He moved to the door and looked up at the handle. He then looked around the apartment. Seeing no one, Penpen began to flap. He began to flap faster and faster, and wind began to form under his flippers. He stopped. Then the penguin leapt impossibly high up, higher than the door handle. Retractable claws, not present on other normal birds, emerged from his wingtips. He caught the door handle and with his weight pushed it down. The door opened. Penpen pushed it further open with his beak. A suitably dramatic wind flew through the doorway, ruffling his crowning feathers. He stepped out and an alley cat hissed at him. He squinted at it and it fled. Looking right and left and seeing no one, he pulled the door shut again with his claws. He etched a small line along the lower edge with his beak, almost unnoticeable by tall humans, but served him well enough as a surface for grabbing. The door clicked shut. It was unlocked, but only an idiot would try to rob a Nerve apartment block. Penpen clung to the walls as he moved down the hall. He gave out a soft "Rah!" as he heard someone approaching. Quickly he dived behind a garbage bin. A drunk party girl and her boyfriend walked by. Once they were out of sight, the penguin continued on his way. The elevator was easier. He just leapt again and pushed at the button with his beak. He waited out of direct sight as it arrived and opened with a ding. Seeing no one inside, he stepped in and pressed G. Penpen watched furtively. Seeing the place dark and deserted, he went out into the courtyard, and then behind the apartment. There, around natural soil, he began to dig. Anyone observing would have seen a rudimentary pattern to it, like a V with little slashes along the side. Penpen finished and began to let out a strange warbling sound, pitching high and low. Anyone observing would have seen the lines glowing a faint yellow. A minute or so later, Penpen stopped. He carefully covered up the signs of his digging. He piddled on it to mark his territory and stamped down the ground. Once more back upstairs. He used the stairs, jumping with impossible lightness from one block to another. This formed his daily exercise, not just of body, but of faith. Each day he could feel himself closer to flying. Look left. Look right. He waddled quickly towards Misato's apartment, opened the door and shut it again. Penpen exhaled. Humans must not know. He walked out to the veranda and stared at the stars. He repeated his warbling song. For those of us who have gone, for those of us who remain and keep the faith, soon we shall all return to the stars. Glory to the great wing that sweeps the stars.
Given our low population, and how dangerous the universe is, we could not afford such activities after the fall, else our population levels might drop at a dangerous rate. You don't seem to mind the idea of the Bright Lord having a harem, or that the members of that harem might be interested in each other, as well as the Bright Lord. The craft worlds have a 1-to-5 male-to-female population ratio, at best. Yes, Rathbone only goes so far. Blessed Emperor, did you have to add that last comment? What? Smell the stink of discrimination. Ha! Able to speak in multiple syllables if speak slowly enough,
The half-orc fighter said with a belch of his mighty air-fogging breath.
Not stupid. Bash for dialectic.
Can I burn the haughty bourgeoisie now? Asked Taerong the Red Mage. No, damn it! Not until they give us quest XP and the filthy yet immensely useful reward money. Yang the wise and immensely flammable wizard groaned out. In fact, hold off on the burning. For some reason, I always end up part of it.
I, having no ability to break the fourth wall, am equally as mystified, able to offer no reason other than that, if I could be capable of breaking the fourth wall, a spell far beyond my level, I might possibly be annoyed at you sleeping with my former wife-to-be.
Yang the wise and immensely flammable just sighed. I should have stuck to Sim City. The Farseer bowed before her mistress, in awe of such long-term planning. It is all as you say, milady. He is everything you've wanted him to be. Gendo was a cold, manipulative bastard, but the capacity to plan ahead in Shinji, all inherited from her. Excellent. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, and now he is even more attached to his girls, and vice versa. He has gained talent, decisiveness, endurance. My boy is irresistible. You opened fans in both hands and began to dance around in glee. Heirs, grandbabies, by the score. Oh! The Farseer clapped gaily. The other residents of the mindscape just sighed, and took some comfort in knowing they had no physical form and complicated love lives that bored wicked woman could meddle with. Okay, a little context before this one starts. This is set in an alternate timeline where Shinji stayed in the alternate universe from when he jumped into Laylor's void. What if Shinji Ikari had stayed? In a world full of fear, a place hurtling inescapably towards self-destruction, none of the fame, the wealth, the ready armies, with nothing but his own wits to rely on, what could he have done? How unkind is fate to the child of villains? Are they left with no choice but to follow in the footsteps of their parents? It was the day before the school festival. They should be planning on what to present, yet everyone in the room was tense and silent. The students, including Asuka, were keeping well away from a certain table near the window. That was Rei Ayanami's place. Shinji sat backwards on the chair ahead of her. The two stared deeply into each other's eyes, in some form of staring contest. There was no lovey-dovey meaning in meeting of their eyes, but the stares were no less intense. Shinji tilted his head slightly to the left and said, "Eh?" Rei tilted her head slightly to the right and said softly, "Yeah?" Shinji smiled and tilted his head to the right. "Yeah?" Rei mirrored the motion and replied, "Yeah?" Shinji's smile quirked up. "Né?" He reached out and lightly touched Rei's nose with his index finger. She looked faintly surprised. Then she turned her head up a bit and gave the finger a small lick. Kensuke had to be wrestled and dog-piled into the ground before he could leap and strangle Shinji.
God damn you, Ikari!
He screamed.
Ah! That was just too damn cute! How dare you! It's not enough that... Die! Just fucking die!
Rei looked at everyone else's strange activities and blinked. She tilted her head aside again and commented softly, "Yeah?" Asuka fled from the room, clutching her nose. Shinji raised a thumbs-up gesture and grinned at Rei. "Perfect score," he said. She looked happy. The 9 situations. Number 1. Sun Tzu said, "The art of war recognizes 9 varieties of ground. 1. Dispersive ground. 2. Facile ground. 3. Contentious ground. 4. Open ground. 5. Ground of intersecting highways. 6. Serious ground. 7. Difficult ground. 8. Hemmed-in ground. 9. Desperate ground." 2. When a chieftain is fighting in its own territory, it is dispersive ground. 3. When he has penetrated into hostile territory, but to no great distance, it is facile ground. 4. Ground the possessions of which imports great advantage to either side is contentious ground. 5. Ground on which each side has liberty of movement is open ground. 6. Ground which forms the key to 3 contiguous states, so that he who occupies it first has most of the empire at his command, is the ground of intersecting highways. 7. When an army has penetrated into the heart of a hostile country, leaving a number of fortified cities in its rear, it is serious ground. 8. Mountain forests, rugged steeps, marshes, and fence-all country that is hard to traverse. This is difficult ground. 9. Ground which is reached through narrow gorges, and from which we can only retire by tortuous paths, so that a small number of the enemy would suffice to crush a large body of our men. This is hemmed-in ground. 10. Ground on which we can only be saved from destruction by fighting without delay is desperate ground. 11. On dispersive ground, therefore, fight not. On facile ground, halt not. On contentious ground, attack not. 12. On open ground, do not try to block the enemy's way. On the ground of intersecting highways, join hands with your allies. 13. On serious ground, gather in plunder. In difficult ground, keep steadily on the march. 14. On hemmed-in ground, resort to stratagem. On desperate ground, fight. The world kept a watchful eye to space as Iriel hijacked the Earth's cradle and had been suborned in turn. Angels could appear at any time, and with their tendency to jam or absorb signals, only overlapping detection screens in close Earth orbit could hope to give early warning. With Layla's destruction and crashing return of the Earth's cradle, all eyes turned inwards, wary and on the lookout for further mischief. Which was a pity, for had they looked again out beyond Martian orbit, they would have detected the arrival of strange new complications to their troubled situation. Fleet Lord Atvar could deny it no longer. Tolsev 3, a cold, wet world the race nevertheless had no choice but to colonize, was surrounded by a heady mix of radio signals. Scopes could pick out bright webs of city clusters at night.
This is impossible,
he hissed.
Those primitives cannot have improved so quickly.
Nevertheless, it is true, exalted Fleet Lord, Kirill replied, bowing. The blue globe spun slowly in the main screen projector.
We have picked up signs of satellites in orbit, and by the strength of signals we are intercepting, they must have moderately powerful transmitters.
They have spaceflight. I must agree with the Fleet Lord. This is impossible.
Shiplord Straha had never really managed to disguise his feelings against Atvar's primacy in the fleet, but the situation was deeply disturbing.
This necessarily implies some means of astronomical detection. We are surely being observed at this time.
What does this do to our invasion? Shiplord Limus of the 79th Emperor Vilatzer asked without being prompted.
It does not necessarily imply having their nuclear capabilities, answered Straha. We do still hold the advantage of the gravity well. Our own nuclear weapons.
Atvar gnashed his teeth.
Unacceptable.
He jabbed with a clawed hand at the projector and entered Straha.
We will not render Tolsev 3 too radioactive for the colonization fleet that follows us. Kirill, you say they have satellites. What sort of satellites? Do they possess a space fleet for defense?
Most likely communication satellites, exalted Fleet Lord. They are too small and moving too quickly to be orbital defenses. We have not detected any other space-powered assets, so it is also quite likely they have no space-going ships.
Ha! See? Primitives.
Atvar hissed again, though now in glee.
They have reached their limits. The slight delay in our preparations have not harmed us. We are more than prepared for anything that we may encounter.
We are still going to invade, Fleet Lord?
Atvar waved aside.
We have slept 20 years in progress, and a colonization fleet can hardly turn back. The Emperor, blessed be his glorious majesty, had ordered us to carry even more factory ships and landers, to better prepare the ground in advance of the colonists. Tolsev 3's our home now, and I suggest the rest of you start getting used to that fact.
As you say, right, Fleet Lord, the shiplords bowed. But then Straha just had to impudently speak up with,
Even if the Tosevites cannot defend against an attack from space, there will be a great burden upon our killercraft pilots and soldiers. Should we not attempt communications before we seek to land our forces?
Atvar snarled again, outraged at such cowardice.
We will overawed them with our might. It is always best to negotiate from a position of strength. If you are unwilling to contribute your men to this task, Shiplord, I can assign you a duty more suitable to your abilities, like perhaps guarding our fuel ships from Tosavite counterattack.
Straha bared his teeth for the insult. Both were already in combative crouches. Then suddenly Advar laughed, flicking his tongue out.
Who cares? We will crush them! We will strike them on high, like the wrath of the heavens! The bulk of our forces are untouchable in orbit. We have our pick of landing sites, and their broken continents will make it difficult to move their troops in defense. No, we have every advantage here. We are well prepared, and we have the blessing of our Emperor. What could possibly go wrong?
For a moment, even Gendo looked unhinged. You have got to be joking.